Okay, can you say something?
Yeah.
All
Can you
right,
hear
cool.
me?
Yeah, it's picking up. All right, we can start now.
All right. Bismillah. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, I seek refuge in God from Satan the accursed. Okay, so in this presentation, we're gonna show how exactly the initials prove code 19 without a shadow of doubt. And in my opinion, this is probably the biggest discovery regarding the initials since its initial discovery in 1974. And that's just my personal opinion. Okay, so let's start. There's a lot of background knowledge, like technicalities. I gotta get them. I'm gonna try to do as fast as possible. But if you have any questions, just make sure you stop me and let me know. And sometimes things will be like extremely hard to believe. So I have my Quran code software. We can verify that too. Or you could just take my word for it. It's your choice. So there's a lot of information on this page right here. You see there's like ALM underscore EX, active, passive, indifferent. There's a whole bunch of terms. I just want to go through them really quickly so you understand what they all what we mean by all of those. All right, so we know there are 14 initials, okay, in the Quran. There are 14 combinations of initials. But the question comes so there's a discussion or argument on how to aggregate these initials because you could aggregate, for example, the ALM initials. You could aggregate them based on the 6 chapters where ALM occurs exactly as it is ALM, or you could aggregate based on 2 additional chapters, chapter 7 and 13, which have the which have the additional Sod and R, which are irrelevant, but still the ALM is present in this form, which is why it's called the present aggregates. And the ALM without the chapter 7 and 13 is called exact form. And there's a bunch of initials like this, like ALR. You can see the ALR in its exact form occurs in 5 chapters. But if you're going to be lenient and include ALR with irrelevant letters like the letter M, you're going to see that there's 6 chapters, including chapter 13. TS exact form is just chapter 27 with the irrelevant letters M. You'll get additional 2 chapters, chapter 26 and 28, with its present form aggregate. Exact form aggregate for Sod is just chapter 38. In present form, you have 2 additional chapters with 7 irrelevant letters. And same with the chapter Q, is just chapter 50. But if you include the present form aggregate of chapter Q, then you include the HMAS, and you get a second aggregate form. So, so what we're doing here is we're basically removing the irrelevant letters to get a second aggregate. So you don't know what these are right now, the single and homogeneous. I'm gonna get through those real quick. We went over it in the last presentation, if you remember, but I'm gonna go over it again real quickly, just for a refresher. But basically, if you remove the relevant letters, sometimes it will lead to significant results, such as homogeneous combinations in the cluster of heterogeneous combinations, like ALR. They're all heterogeneous. But if you remove the irrelevant letters, you'll get AL, which is homogeneous, and you get R, which is single letter. And we would expect this because the Quran calls itself a wise book, so it knows which letters are relevant and which letters are irrelevant. Okay, so that explains the relevant and irrelevant counters. Okay, so we're gonna go through each initial, and each time we go through them, we're gonna count how many relevant initials there are and how many irrelevant initials there are. And we're gonna denote the present and exact form by the suffix ex and pr for present form and exact form aggregate. And not every aggregate form has a present form. For example, HM, you'll see that exact form and present form are the same. So with that being said, our initials are actually 19. We went from 14 initials to 19 initials because we have ALM exact and present form. ALMS doesn't have exact or present form, just ALMS. ALR is exact and present form. TS is exact and present. SAW is exact and present. Q is exact and present. And altogether, it makes 19 initials. Okay? Are you following along so far? Are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I had my mic off. Yeah, I'm following along.
No problem. Okay, perfect. All right, so that explains the suffix at the end, at the EX. Now let's go to, now I want to just quickly go over what active, passive, and different are. Active is when we use conventions that we typically use. Passive is when we abide or goes against the conventions we typically use. Passive is when we abide by the conventions we use. And indifferent is that it has no impact on the results of the initial. So passive you could think of as conventional and active is non-conventional. So conventionally we would add initials. We would always include the basmala as the unnumbered verses, and when we use the classical script, automatic script. So that would be our passive laws. And our non-conventional laws would be to concatenate, to discriminate unnumbered verses, and to use modern script or a different script, the classical script. So that's our active, passive, and indifferent counters. Okay. So these are our 19 initials. Okay, but we've only, but it's only been like the results in this list here are only it's a result of only the passive rules applied to them. So when we only apply the passive rules, we'll get a remainder of 12 for the ALM exact, a remainder of 7 for the ALM presence. And you'll see that the only initials that are actually multiples of 19 with passive rules that we're used to are chapter 19's Kaf Haya and so on, chapter 36 to 85, and then these 4 initials. And we'll get 2 initials that are off by 1, and Sod present, and the rest of the initials are off by more than 1. So 11 out of 19 initials are off by 1 if we only use the passive rules. So the passive rules, if you remember, they're only adding, always counting the basmala and using classical script. And the input in our little system here will always be the fully passive value. So this list that we went through, that I showed you earlier, these will serve as our inputs as we're going through the 19 initials. Okay, so now we know what this is. This is the input. These are the active, passive, and different counters. This denotes whether it's exact or present form aggregate. This counts the relevant and irrelevant letters. Okay, now I just want to go through each one of these square modules quickly and just show you what they're doing. So excuse me 1 second. My AirPod batteries just died. Let me just put it in front. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, perfect. Okay, so evaluation. I'm just going to zoom into these modules right here, and we're going to see what's going on inside of them as the inputs traverse through each one of them. So for evaluation, it's active when it's a multi-letter initial that's homogeneous, so it concatenates. That's how you evaluate it. And it's passive, it bypasses it when it's heterogeneous combination, and it's indifferent when it's a singular letter. And just quickly, I just want to show you what homogeneous heterogeneous initials are. So if you remember from our last presentation, there are some initials that are standalone, and there's some initials that are merged. The initials, and if you don't remember what standalone initials are initials that are just by themselves, while merged initials are the initials that occur with the surah's contents, or it's merged with the Quran's contents. So if you do that, sorry, going backwards. So if you do that, you'll get 2 lists of letters. Some of them that are non-exclusive that belong to both merged and standalone, and some that are exclusive that only belong to one group. So the R is only from the merged group, the H is only from the merged group, the Y is only from the standalone group, so it's exclusive. The Ain is only standalone exclusive. The Ta is in both groups, so it's non-exclusive. When we go through each one of these 14 letters, you'll see we get exactly 7 exclusive letters and 7 non-exclusive letters. And if you put them, and if you go back to the multi-lettered initials, you'll see that the initials that have both exclusive and non-exclusive would be heterogeneous. They would add in their passive, and initials that are homogeneous from a single group are active and they concatenate. And obviously, the single letters you can't concatenate or add a single letter, so they're indifferent. So just quickly going over examples of what adding is like this. The YS is a heterogeneous combination. So you would add the letters Y and S and you get 19 multiple. The LMS is a homogeneous combination, so you concatenate the letters and you get 19 multiple. And the single letter, the Q is a single letter, so you can't concatenate or add because it's a single letter, so it's indifferent. Doesn't matter which one you use, and that's why it would be classified as indifferent. That's why single letters are always indifferent. So that's how you evaluate the letters. All right, so now for discrimination. So now we've went over the evaluation. Now for discrimination. So when initial declares tilka ayat al-kitab, it means that is saying that these letters are part of the verses of the book, and you would ignore the unnumbered verse. Okay, and when it doesn't say tilka ayat al-kitab, you do include the unnumbered verse. And when the letters are not found in the initial to begin with, then it's just indifferent, because whether you include the unnumbered verse or don't include it, it doesn't have an effect on the result of initials because it doesn't exist in unnumbered verse, right? So tilka ayat al-kitab, you see that tilka ayat al-kitab is always declared after initials that are part of the basmala. So you won't find an initial like QKG, tilka ayat al-kitab, because that would be redundant, okay? Because QKG isn't found in the unnumbered verse. The only letters that are found in unnumbered verse are S, M, A, H, Ha, Mim, Noon, and so on. So you'll never find initials that are followed by tilka ayat al-kitab that are redundant to the unnumbered verse, such as the QKG. Okay, I'm just going to skip all this because these are really technical, but they basically prove my point that the letters that are found in the basmala are the keys to including the unnumbered verses or not including the unnumbered verses. So you'll see, like in the basmala, the only letters that are followed by tilka ayat al-kitab are ALMRS, and you'll see it in Surah Fatiha, the key, they occur a multiple 7 times. The potential keys that are found in the basmala but are not followed by tilka ayat al-kitab, they occur in chapter Fatiha, the key, a multiple 7 times, and the huruf muqatta'at that are not found on unnumbered verse in the basmala. Once again, they occur a multiple 7 times in the chapter called the key. And you'll see that the abjad numerical value of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim minus all the irrelevant letters, so B, H, Ha, Noon, Ha, Y, we'll get 19 multiple. So 786 is the value of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. For minusing all these letters that are not part of tilka ayat declaration, they result in 19 multiple. So far we've got that ALMRs are the only initials that tilka ayat is declared for, and the numerical value of ALMRs in the unnumbered verse is 19 times 37. But in my opinion, the greatest proof for tilka ayat kitab being linked to LRMS is this verse right here, where the first time God uses tilka ayat, it makes its debut in the same exact verse as the letters ALMRS occur together in the consecutive order. ALMRS right here, Al-Mursaleen, occurs in the same verse as tilka ayat. So the very first verse where tilka ayat occurs also in 252. And you see that this first tilka ayat kitab, the first time it occurs, has 19 times 2 letters, and the letters of ALRMS in this verse occurs 19 times. So this is clearly showing us that tilka ayat al-kitab is declared for these 5 letters. So that's a discrimination module right here. Now for the elaboration module, when initial is not a multiple elaboration and the letters are dynamic, we use modern script. So right here, just before doing the elaboration part, if we have a non-zero remainder, we elaborate and give ourselves a second chance, so to speak. And if just before elaborating, if it isn't 19 multiple, then it's passively just bypass elaboration. This is the only selective part of the whole thing. Everything else has a criteria. And then it's indifferent when the initials are static, because whether you elaborate or don't elaborate, or use modern script or classical script, it's not going to change the results. So that would be that would be the indifference. So I just want to quickly go over some words that change between elaboration and classical. So for example, the word alamin, that there's like an invisible alif in classical, where modern is spelled out. The word al-layl has 3 lambs in modern and only 2 in classical. Allah is the same between both modern script and classical script. Bastatan in classical script with a sod, and in modern script with a sin. And then nunji from Surah Anbiya, verse 88. There's an invisible noon in the classical script, but in modern script there's two noons. And then Aqsa, Masjid al-Aqsa in chapter 17, verse 1, is actually spelled with an alif in classical, but in modern script it's actually spelled with an alif maqsura. And then Hada, even though there's an alif, like an invisible alif in classical here, in modern script it's still spelled the same. And in some cases, modern script will actually result in multiple words if you include the invisible alif or the floating alif. Like for example, Ya Musa will become two words, Ya Musa. So that's some changes that happen between the classical and modern script. So I want to just go over some of the reasons why I think that Rashad Khalifa would improve in modern script. So firstly, Rashad Khalifa, he did use modern script, in my opinion, when he changed the sod into a scene, and when he spelled the noon as noon wow noon. So you see that the noon wow noon actually means fish in modern script. So the noon wow noon being spelled like this is it's probably the only word actually that you can make a case that it shouldn't be spelled out. But you can't like deny the fact that it does mean fish. And Bastatan, this one in modern script, like this is a Google Translate. I just typed in the word BST. It understood as extent, which is what Bastatan means, because this is how you spell it in modern script. So he did use it, the modern script, twice. And the word noon means fish, that I just alluded to earlier in this dictionary over here. So the word fish actually occurs in Surah 68. And from noon, if you count the number of words from noon to Hud in 6848 in the same surah, we'll get a multiple of 19 words, 133 times 2, which is 90 times 14. So from noon in Surah 68 verse 1 to 68 verse 48, which says Hud, you'll get a multiple of 19 words. And this only works in modern script. And then also the noon from 68.1 all the way to the noon in 21.87 is again once again a multiple 19 words. And this only works in modern script because, like I said, in classical script, the word counts are differ from modern script. So yeah, these only work in the modern script, which is showing us that Rashad Khalifa did use modern script. In my opinion, the best evidence for Rashad Khalifa using modern script is that it comes from chapter 11. In chapter 11, God says, Alif Lam Ra, this is a book whose verses are well perfected and fully explained. The word fully explained is fussilat, which actually can be referred to as elaborate. Okay, so now this is chapter 11 in modern script, and these are all the letter frequencies of the letters in chapter 11 in modern script. Okay, and this part's going to blow your mind. These are the letters of Rashad Khalifa that occur in chapter 11 in modern script. Okay, you see that the letters of Rashad Khalifa in modern script is 19 times 19 times 11, which showed that he would have approved of this method of using
Wow.
modern script.
Dude, this is
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah, it really is. And then also, if that's not convincing enough to you, his initials, both RK, like Arha, I have a highlight in green over here. They're both 19 multiples. His initials, RK. So this is 323, 19 times 17, and the Kha, 57, 19 times 3. And this only works in modern script. This doesn't work in classical script. Like this result that we got here, 19 times 11, is the only works in modern script. And this over here, 19 times 3, 19 times 17, only works in modern script as well. So that really does show something. And actually, the scariest part about chapter 11, verse 1 is that the 4 changes that Rashad Khalifa made to the Quran, they're all 19 multiples up to this verse. So the first change would be the removal of these 2 verses. The second change would be the change of this sod to a scene, or this sod to a scene, or this noon that's spelled out. Okay? And now if you go from chapter, so this is the first change. So if you count the verses from 9.1 to 8 all the way to 11.1, we'll get 19 times 6 verses. And this is a sod change. So if you count the sods from 7 to 69 to 11.1, we'll get 19 times 10 sods. Another sod change from verse 2 to chapter 2, verse 245, another multiple 19 sods. And this is a noon change. So if you count the number of noon words, we'll go up to chapter 11, verse 1, we'll get 19 times 7 noons. And The letter noon is the fourth most frequent letter in the Arabic language. So we're obviously not referring to the letter, we're referring to the word noon. So see, these are some words that have noon in them. Mu'minun, yu'linun.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're not counting individual noons, just the words that
Yeah,
contain noon.
exactly. The
Okay.
words that have noon in them. And you'll see that they're all 19 multiples up to 11 1. And the craziest part is that the number of noon words from 68 1 to 11 1 is 133. And if you remember, the number of noons in chapter 68, when noon is spelled out, is 133. So it's not just some random 19 multiple. It's a significant 19 multiple. It's 133 in both cases, 19 times 7. You see that?
Yeah, yeah, I see it. Wow. Praise God.
Okay, so all four of these changes that he made are 19 multiples to 11 1. And his name occurs in chapter 11, 19 times, 19 times, 11 times. And his initials both occur, R and K, occur a multiple 19 times. 19 times, I believe, is 20, 19 times 17, and 19 times 3. So the craziest part about this, not only are they all 19 multiples, but they're non-19 factors. If you add them, you get another 19 multiple. So this was 6, 10, 15, 7. You get 38, which is 19 times 2. So this is all showing us that Rashad Khalifa would have agreed with the elaboration theory. Okay. And now I just want to give you a simplified chart on what indifferent and what passive and active are. So when the initial is when it's initial single letter, then it's indifferent. When it's multi-letter, then it's passive or active. We move on to table 2, and we check to see if it's heterogeneous or homogeneous. When the initial is not found in a number verse, it's indifferent. And when it is found in a number verse, we move on to the second table, and we see if there's a tilka ayat declaration or no tilka ayat declaration. When the initials are static, it's indifferent. When it's dynamic, we move on to passive active, and we check to see if it's R before or not R before. If the remainder is 0 before, or if the remainder isn't 0 before. All right.
Yeah, sounds
Does that
good.
make sense?
Yeah.
So these are the two tables that will help us guide us through the initials. Okay, so and this is also our tilki ayat declaration counter that we're gonna go through, and this is a remainder counter. When an initial has a remainder of 0, this counter will go up. When an initial has a remainder of that's off by 1, either 1 above or 1 below, this counter will go up. And when the initial is off by more than 1, then this counter will go up. So that's what that does.
Okay.
And this is going to be our list. We're going to update them each time we go through these initials. We're going to record their outputs here. Okay, let's start then. So first, okay, let's start with ALM exact aggregate. So it's multi-letters, 3 letters, right? It's because it's 3 letters, it's multi-lettered. So it's either passive or active. We move on to table 2. Okay, if it was indifferent, we just settle with table 1. But because it's multi-lettered, now we have to see if it's passive or active. Now, these 6 letters have to, okay, we removed the relevant letters. There are no relevant letters here, which is why we got this. So there's no irrelevant letters and 18 relevant letters, right? 3 times 6. And because it's homogeneous, right, you see they're all non-exclusive, we concatenate. So our relevant initial counter went up by 18. Our evaluation is now plus 18, right? Our relevant initial is plus 18. And we have our active counter went up by 1 because we have an active rule here. As you can see, active is because it's homogeneous, right? So our active counter went up. That's why I colored this box in green. Okay, and now let's go on to our discrimination. Initials are found in unnumbered verse. As you can see here, ALM has a strong presence in unnumbered verse. So it's going to be active or passive or active. As for it's going to be active because it has a tilka ayat declaration. See, these are the 6 chapters of ALM. One of them has a tilka ayat declaration right here. So our tilka ayat counter goes up by 1, and our active counter is now up by 2. We have a plus 1 for the tilka ayat declaration. And as you can see, the input here, right? We start off with our input 19,029.7, went down to a remainder of 9. And after discrimination, now it's at a remainder of 7. Okay. And now we're gonna now for the elaboration module. So ALM has dynamic letters because the letters A and L are dynamic. So it's gonna be passive active, and because it's non-zero, the remainder is non-zero. See, it's a 7 here. It's gonna be active. And once we switch the mono script, we're gonna get this number. And because it's off by one, has a remainder of one, our remainder counter is gonna go. Our remainder counter here is now one, and basically that's how we're gonna assess all 19 initials. Did you get that? Hopefully, get easier as we go through more initials. But this is our updated list now. I colored this in yellow.
I get
Yeah,
the
so our updated,
ALM EX part. We can move on to the next.
We went from a remainder of 12 to a remainder of one. And it's a rough start, but at least it's closer to a 19 also. It's also a one rather than like 12. Okay, let's go to the next one. Present. So small letter, remove all this. So we have the heading is going to here, but because we're removing the letters, we end up with all homogeneous. 2 relevant letters detected, solid on raw. 24 relevant letters detected, ALM, all of these. So 24 relevant, because it's all homogeneous, we concatenate. It's active. The active counter goes up. Now we have 42 relevant letters and 2 irrelevant letters. And now we go to the discrimination, right? Initial founded on number verse. And there's 2 TKI declarations. Our TKI declaration is now 3 because we found 2 of them. And now our figure here has a remainder of 18. And now because the letters are dynamic and because the remainder is 0, sorry, it's not 0, we elaborate, it's active. And now we have a remainder of 0 for the ALM present. And now we have, so the first one was 1 off by 1. And now this one is a perfect 19 multiple. And our updated list looks like this. So we went from 2 initials that are off by more than 1 to 1 initial is off by 1 and 1 initial that's perfect multiple. And now we do the same thing with ALMS, where 4 letters concatenate. We're counting all the irrelevant initials and all the irrelevant initials, and then you'll see that this ends up as a multiple of 19 with 0 remainder right here. And now our updated list looks like this. And now keep in mind that the actives are 7, and so far we use 2 passives, and we use 0 in difference rules. Let me just go through this real quick. So the ALR, we use passive active. There's a bunch of TKI declarations here. So now it's at 6. Our TKI is at 6 now. I know the passive has been used at 8 times. The passive used 3 times, the active used 8 times. And yeah, let's just go through that. Now our updated list looks like this. So we got 3 19 multiples just by using these rules. ALR present. So this has 3 letters. And once we remove the irrelevant letters, you see it results in a heterogeneous combination and a homogeneous combination and a single letter. So it has all 3. It has heterogeneous and it has homogeneous. This one is really amazing because once you remove the relevant letters, you get both homogeneous and heterogeneous. And let me just skip all these details. But you end up with, no matter how you look at it, it's going to be indifferent because you have the R, which is single letter. You have the AL, which is active homogeneous. You have the LR, which is passive heterogeneous. So no matter how you look at it, this is going to be an indifferent rule, right? So the conjunction here, like after the valuation, you're going to have 2 values. One that's passive that just bypasses it, so it's going to be 10, 3, 2, 5, just like the input. And the other one's going to be a concatenation. Okay. And then we go on to discrimination. So we say there's 2 TKI declarations. We don't count the declaration here because the meme is irrelevant, and TK is a singular reference. Whereas if we cut the ALMR, like if we dissect where that meme is, we'll get 2 chains, and the 2 chains should be a ulaika ayat kitab, but it's a tilka ayat kitab, a single reference. So this Bismillah, the Bismillah from chapter 13 is counted. And I just want to show you that the chain rule isn't redundant. Code 19 actually proves this as well, because the word chain that occurs 3 times in the Quran. Okay, in these 3 verses, the word chain occurs. You'll see that that has 19 words, and the ALMR, right, occurs a multiple of 19 times, 38 times. I counted all the ALMR, in the three verses where the word chain occurs, you see it's 38. So this sequence of ALMR is supposed to be treated as a chain. And because meme is an irrelevant letter, it cuts the chain in half, which means that the tilka ayat kitab no longer applies here. Which means that you count the basmala of chapter 13, but not the basmalas of 12, 10, and 15. So that gives us like tilka ayat declaration count of 12, 3 from the concatenation and 3 from the adding. And you'll see that it results in a remainder of 0 for both of them, which is pretty amazing. And let's go on to the elaboration module. AL is a dynamic letter, so again, passive active. Go to table 2. It's a 0 before the elaboration, therefore it's going to be passive. And you'll see now our active, passive, and different counters are 10, 5, 1. And we have our updated list looks like this. We have 4 initials, right, that are 19 multiples, and 1 initial is off by 1. And the ALR actually resulted in 2 19 multiples. One multiple that concatenates and 1 multiple that adds. Because the removal of the relevant letters for this initial result in both homogeneous and heterogeneous. Did you understand that?
Yeah, I got it.
All right, perfect. So I'm just going to go these through really quickly. So LMR is 4 letters. Remove the irrelevant letters. It's homogeneous. You see it as ALM and R. It's homogeneous. Therefore, you add, and then you go through the passive act. It's found LMR has a strong presence in the unnumbered verse, right? Because it has a strong presence in the unnumbered verse, you have to go on table 2 because it's passive active, and because it has tilka ayat declaration, it's going to be active, and the declaration active, the tilka ayat declaration count is going to go up by 1, and the active declaration is also going to go up by 1 as well because it's an active input, and you see the result is going to be a 0 remainder, and because this is dynamic, right? The AL is dynamic. It's going to be passive, and it's going to end up in a 19 multiple. Our update list look like this now. So now let's hope the KHYS is already 19 multiple. Let's hope none of the rules obstruct it or ruin it, right? Because there's a chance that our 19 multiple here might be ruined, and we'll get something that's not a 19 multiple with the rules applied. Okay, so it has 5 letters. Removing irrelevant letters. We've got 5 relevant letters, no irrelevant letters. And you'll see that the final result is a multiple of 9. So it's fully passive, this initial. So the rules that we have here, right? Amazingly and shockingly, none of them ruined this pristine form of the initial as a 19 multiple. It bypassed everything, so that wouldn't ruin it. So not only are we getting new 19 multiples, we're preserving the ones we already have. That's the amazing part about this. All right, let's go again. Taha. And Taha is going to be our first initial that results in a remainder that's more than 1. So this is our first, you could say, stain on the chart. TSM is homogeneous, therefore it concatenates. It has 2 declarations here. So our counter is going to be 15 now. And the letters are static, so it's indifferent. And now our remainder is 0. This is how our chart looks like now. And then we go through the TS exact form. And we end up with another 19 multiple, 2793. TS present form. Okay, so this is a multiple letters, 2 letters, right? And it's homogeneous, right? There's two irrelevant letters here that memes, right? Because the memes are irrelevant. So we remove the irrelevant letters, we get all homogeneous. We concatenate. Our relevant counter is 105. Our irrelevant counter is 5. And because this TSM does have a presence in the unnumbered verse and passive active, so they all have tilka ayat declarations. So our tilka ayat declaration is now 19, and the result of the discrimination is 0. So just go through the elaboration. Static, it's going to be indifferent. The result, TSM, they're all static letters, which is why this is indifferent. The result is a remainder of 0. Our updated list looks like this. And YS, it's a heterogeneous, that's why we're adding. It has a presence in the basmala. Passive, it's going to be passive because the discrimination can be passive because there is no tilka declaration. And the Y is dynamic. As you can see here, the yeah, there's an extra yeah in the modern script, so it's dynamic. And because it's zero before, we bypass it, and we have our we bypassed it, which is a remainder of which gives us a remainder of zero. And I know I'm fully aware that the elaboration is the only one that doesn't have a criteria. Like the evaluation discrimination do have criteria, the elaboration doesn't. So we choose if we use passive or active, but what we don't choose is how many times the passive is used, because this is going to end up being a 19 at the end. Okay, so this is our updated list now. Our sort exact is going to be our second initial that gives us a remainder of more than one. Sorry. Yeah, our sort exact, as you can see, it's going to be our second initial besides the th. That's going to give us a remainder of more than one. And sort present, it's singular letters, so it's going to be indifferent. We're going to remove the irrelevant letters ALM, KHY, IN. It's good. So there's going to be 7 irrelevant letters here and 3 relevant letters. So that's why the irrelevant letters just jumped up to 12 now. Initials, there is no sort found in the initial verse, so it's indifferent. And it's going to be dynamic because the sort here changes to C from 769 to modern 769. And then because it's not 0, it's going to elaborate. And once we elaborate, we get this, the sort terms that's seen goes off by 1. It goes from 153 to 152. And now we got ourselves a perfect 19 multiple. So our list looks like this now. And then we do that same with the Hamim. It completely preserves what we got earlier. Einstein Kof, we got 19 multiple. We preserved it all the way through. And the Kof, it also stays preserved all the way through. As you can see, our counters are going up. They're all going to converge at 19. And then the Kof present, it's gonna be single letters, so it's gonna be indifferent. It's not found, the best one's gonna be indifferent, and the static, so it's gonna be indifferent. So we got 3 indifferents right there. And now our last year are noon, so we're at 18 for each one. So we're gonna be hoping that each one of these are at least one active, one passive, one indifferent, and that's exactly what we get, because noon is single letter, so it's gonna be indifferent. Okay, so we're gonna get 19 indifferent, and then discrimination, because the noon is found in the basmala, and there is no tilka declaration, it's gonna be passive, so we're gonna get 19 for passive. And then noon is dynamic in this sense, because noon is, in modern script, noon means fish, and we know that the surah talks about the of Ashab al-Hut, the Prophet Jonah, so we can assume that the noon can be spelled out. And on top of that, I already showed you that the noons from this verse all the way to chapter 11:1 is a multiple 19. And on top of that, we have the messenger of God who confirmed it. So there's no reason to assume that noon shouldn't be, or the noon shouldn't be noon. So it's going to be passive active, and because it's a non-zero, it's going to have to be active. And now we end up with, we used active 19 times, passive 19 times, indifferent 19 times, and the result was 16 initials that have multiple, that end up with a result that's multiple of 19. 2 initials that was more than 1, and 1 initial that was extremely close to being a multiple 19 that was off by 1.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. And as you can see here, our tilki ayat declaration count is 19. So we used tilki ayat exactly 19 times to get these results. We used indifferent 19 times to get these results. We used passive 19 times. We used active 19 times for 19 initials. And so as for the irrelevant initials, you might be wondering what these are. The irrelevant and relevant initials, why bother to include them? Because the irrelevant initials and the relevant initials, their sum is a multiple of 19 as well. So throughout the whole thing, we were counting all the relevant and relevant initials, and you'll see that they also converge to multiple 19. By the time we went through all 19 of them, they all basically give us irrelevant and relevant initials that is a multiple 19. And Yeah. So our initial counter is 19 times 8, which is 152, what we just got. Our TDKI counter is 19. Our indifferent counter is 19. Our passive counter is 19. Our active counter is 19. The initials we used are 19. And now you might be wondering what this is about, right? Because this is obviously 19 initials. But yeah, so I want to just go through some of the wisdoms about this. So the Hamim, right? God actually teases the idea of using Tilkat Kitab with the Hamim twice. So he says Hamim wal Kitab al Mubin, and he says Alif Lam Tilka Ayat Kitab al Mubin. So imagine if this wow here was Tilka Ayat, then the whole system would have collapsed. Do you see how look how close these initials come to declaring Tilka Ayat Kitab? Hamim by the clear book, and then this is the ayat of the clear book. So if this wow was just Tilka Ayat, then the whole thing would have fell. And this isn't a like just 2 chapters. This is 7 chapters. So even if one chapter of the 7 chapters had Tilka Ayat, then the Hamim surah would no longer work because the Ham and Mim are found in the Basmala. And if you don't include the Basmala, then the whole thing's not going to work any longer.
Yeah, you have to be
And now,
really selective with which ones get to the ayats and which ones don't, right?
exactly. And the Kaf Haya and Saw, you can see that there's a dynamic letter here, right? And because it was dynamic, it was passive. But what if it was what if it was a D instead of a Y? The letter D is static. So if it was a D, then what would have happened? The elaboration would have been indifferent rather than passive, right? And if it was indifferent rather than passive, we would have got 20 indifferents, 18 passives. So even the selection of static and dynamic letters is fine-tuned by God. Okay? So that's one thing. Because if it was KHDAS rather than KHYAS, then we would have had a counter like this. Not all 3 of them being 19 that we ended up with. Similarly, if the noon was spelled as noon, wow, noon in classical, rather than just a singular noon, then from the get-go, we would have 133, and the elaboration would have been indifferent, right? Because there would be nothing to elaborate to. So the fact that it was a singular noon, we got to elaborate it, or like change it, and we end up with a noon, wow, noon, and our counter became 19 here. See what I mean? So even the reason why the classical scripts have a noon in them, there's a really good reason for it.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, I see it.
And same with the sword, actually. Same with the sword. Because you know how Rashad Khalifa, he changes into a scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the sword exists so that this could be elaborated to reach a 19 multiple for the active. Because if this was a scene from the get-go, right, you would have had all indifferent, and you had 20 indifferents and 18 actives. But the fact that this was a sword to begin with, we had to elaborate here, and elaboration means active, right? So we had to change it. So this would become a 19, and this would be 1 less.
Oh, wait, sorry. Can you explain that part again with the Bastatan part?
Yeah, so if we had the scene here
Mm-hmm.
from the get-go, right? Instead of the heavy sword, this heavy scene, then the evaluation would have all been indifferent because this would be single letter. There's no sword in the Basmala,
Mm-hmm.
and elaborating into modern script wouldn't change anything. But the fact that it does change something means that the active goes up by 1 because it changed it.
Okay, I
Because this
get
would
it.
be green.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a really good reason why this is a sword rather than a scene. Because
so
now we get to
so
now,
even the mistake itself was handpicked.
yeah, even the things we get to change are handpicked. Exactly.
That's crazy.
Okay, and now so we have exactly 5 initials that work best in modern script, 5 initials that work best in classical script, and there's 9 initials that work for either or. Okay. I remember the elaboration theory stems from chapter 11. Okay, so this is pre-elaboration and this is post-elaboration. Notice how every single time initial in pre-elaboration is off by 1. So the sod was 153, the noon was 130, off by 1. ALRX was off by 1. But after you take into modern script, now they're all 19 multiples. And when they're off by more than 1, when you take them to modern script, it becomes off by 1. So it's like they're all improving, if you know what I mean. And in the cases of the ALR exact, it's not just 1 letter change. Like this goes from 9,121 to 9,690. So that's a crazy jump. And this happens to be a 19 multiple. Same with this. You see here that like there's a bunch of like these aren't the same like numbers at all. Maybe the last four digits are the same, but everything else is different. Okay, so I want to go back to chapter 11, and we're gonna take the sum of these four initials that are 19 multiples post elaboration. So this is chapter 11. This is the occurrence of the letters in chapter 11. Okay. So meme occurs 702 times. Alif occurs 1280 times. And then so A plus L plus N plus A plus R, A L plus R plus Sod plus Noon. So these we're basically taking these 8 letters, and you get a sum of 581, which happens to be a 19 multiple. And this is from chapter 11. So the elaboration theory is looking pretty strong here. And I want to go back to this. So obviously the initials, we got one initial that was off by 1, 2 initials that were off by more than 1, and the rest of them were 19 multiples, were off by 0. Okay, so this is our list from our first initial to our 19th initial. First complete list is off by 1, which is the ALMF. Second complete list is the TH and the Sod present, or the Sod exact thing. And then the third complete list would be those that are off by 1, because Noon is the last initial that is off by 0, so it'll be the last complete list. And then, so if you concatenate all first, second, and third, we'll get a 19 multiple again. So even the distribution of the initials that are off by 1, off by more than 1, and off by 0, even these guys, they're fine-tuned. And the reason why we put them in this order is because this is the first complete list. The second complete list would be TH and Sod present, and the final list would be the 16 initials that are 19 multiples. So far, so good. Hopefully, this will put things into perspective. So you see, this is like basically a summary of everything we want. So if you make a chart of passive for evaluation, you see that there are 7 initials that are passive when evaluated, passively evaluated, 6 initials that are indifferently evaluated, and 6 initials are actively evaluated. And then if both across, like the row from across, from left to right and up to, from top to bottom, they're all 19. That's the crazy part. So there's exactly 19 so the 19 was used, the passive was used 19 times. The indifferent was used 19 times, and active was used 19 times.
Wow.
Which resulted in 16 multiples, not 19 multiples. 1 that was off by 1 and 2 that were off by more than 1.
This is insane. I'm gonna have to watch this all over again just to fully
Yeah,
grasp
it's really insane, man. I agree. So so of the 19 multiples, I just basically put them, like, categorized them into those that didn't result in any 19 multiples, those that resulted in at least one 19 multiple, and those that resulted in no 19 multiples. Oh, sorry, more than one 19 multiple. So the ALR present, if you recall the ALR present, because it had both homogeneous, heterogeneous, it resulted in 2 19 multiples. Remember?
Yeah, I remember.
So we have it right here, actually. We have 10, 2, 9, 8, adding, and then concatenating. This is the only initial that works for both adding and concatenating. I tried it with every other initial. This is the only one that works. And it also happens to be the only initial that has both heterogeneous and homogeneous. So I don't think there's any coincidence here. Okay, and now I just want to, okay, let's divide them into those that are, you could say that these are like the standard or the common initials because they're resulting in 19 multiple. And these are the anomalies because they either result in more than 119 multiple or less than 119 multiple, whereas everybody else results in exactly 119 multiple. Okay, and these are their values. These numbers here I have listed here, they're all 19 multiples. Each one of these numbers, they're 19 multiples here. Wait, can you see my mouse?
Yeah, I can see it.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. So these are the status of each of the initials modules. So you got active, active, active for ALM present, active, passive, 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 active, active, passive, active, passive, and then some of the initials you have indifferent, 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 so on and so forth. Okay, The only true indifferent is elaboration because it's not anchored. Remember how I told you initially that evaluation and discrimination, they have criteria, but the elaboration doesn't
Ai,
have a criteria.
sabe?
What is that?
Gotta go there.
I think that's a scar.
My bad. That was my brother screaming.
It's all good. You can go ahead, Shiki.
Are we good, guys?
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yeah. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So, so the evaluation, remember, single letters, they're technically homogeneous. So even though they're indifferent, you could think of them as like active, like secretly active, even though they're indifferent. As discrimination initials that do not appear in the basmala, but they don't have tilka ayat discrimination, they're technically passive. So the only true indifference is actually the elaboration because it doesn't have a clear criteria. You could think of them as subscript. So this discrimination is actually indifferent passive, and the evaluation is actually indifferent active with a subscript. But elaboration has active passive. So let's split them between. So let's split these two between the Uthmani script and the monoscript because elaboration doesn't have a criteria. So any initial that has I for the elaboration is going to result in two forms of itself. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Can you run that again? I don't
yeah.
think
So every initial. Yeah. Do you want me to go back to this previous slide?
Yeah.
Okay. So evaluation. If you remember that we evaluate when things are homogeneous by adding, and we evaluate things that are heterogeneous. So heterogeneous by adding and by homogeneous by concatenating.
Yeah.
So single letters, they're homogeneous, right? Because just a single letter, it's of one nature, right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
But we're not really concatenating, even though it's homogeneous, because there's nothing to concatenate with, even though it's homogeneous. So you could think of it as indifferent, but it's actually active indifferent. Similarly, discrimination is indifferent passively, because even though the initial does, the only reason why it's indifferent is because initial isn't in the basmala. But really, passive is when there is no tilka declaration. So really, the basmala is there. It just doesn't have an impact because the letter isn't in the basmala. It was actually passive indifferent. It's indifferent because it doesn't have an impact on the result, but it's passive because of the criteria. So it's anchored on passive, and this is anchored on active because it's homogeneous, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then the elaboration, because it has no criteria, it's the only true indifference because it doesn't have a criteria. And because of that, every initial that has indifference for elaboration, right, it's going to result in two. It's going to result in two forms of itself. So that's why I divide it into modern script A. You could think of this A subscript A, right? Sorry, I subscript A, and A, I subscript A. And here you have P. You could think of it I subscript P. Okay. So it's going to result in, so as you see here, the TSM here, these three letters, they occur here as well. Because there is no anchor for these indifferences, whereas the eyes for the evaluation and discrimination, because they have a criteria, they are anchored. So let's just focus on monoscript for now. You'll see that the non-19 multiples. Do you know what I mean by non-19 multiple?
Yeah.
Factor. So the non-19 factor is what it's multiplied by. So 510 times 960 times 19 equals 9,690. 147 times 19 equals this number, and so on and so forth. So if we add their non-19 factors, we get another multiple of 19. So even if this was 100, like 114, it's 106 instead of 133, we wouldn't have ended up with a 19 multiple for monoscript. And the crazy part is that we could replicate this exact results with the Uthmani script. So if you remember here where we split between Uthmani and modern script, so we just evaluated these, we got 19 multiple. Now if you evaluate the 919 factors for the Uthmani script, you'll get the same exact, you won't get the same exact result, but you get another 19 multiple. So this is Uthmani script now. See, we have a completely different list of initials here. Some of them are repeated, but these guys are new, right? If you add their non-19 factors, you get another 19 multiple once more.
Dang, so even with the new initials, you'll still get a multiple of 19 with a different script.
Exactly. So the P's only work in Uthmani. The A's only work in modern. But the I's, they work in both. So that's why you can think of these as they occur in both of them. But these guys are selective. They only occur in one script. So if you do that for both of them, you see that they're non-19 factors, both result in 19 multiple. See that?
Yeah, that's so cool.
And I keep in mind we have exactly 19 passives, 19 indifferents, and 19 active. So this is just some random results here. So if we focus based on those initials that are just purely passive and indifferent, and those that have active in them, we'll see that the non-19 factors once again end up with 19 multiples. See here, the 19 multiples, because these guys for their indiscrimination they have active, and these guys for their evaluation discrimination, because we already covered in elaboration, right, with these two. See, this is elaboration. So now I went on to evaluation discrimination. You see, these have active and these are passive or indifferent. The result in 19 multiples. 19 multiples for their non-19 factors. And if you remember, these are the same 6 initials that we got from the get-go. So these 6 initials that we got from the get-go in pure passive form, right? That didn't require any changing whatsoever. These guys, their non-19 factors are multiple 19, which is pretty crazy, right? Because even the solid present, right, it's off by 1 because of the bastatan from chapter 7, verse 69. This noon while noon is 132 because we haven't changed anything for these 6 initials, and the result is 190, which is the non-19 factors is 190. And then you can split it up once more between purely passive and those having different. And you'll see once again you get 19 multiples for the non-19 factors. So let me just give you a quick summary. So we take the initials that are purely passive, okay? The initials that are purely passive are YS and KHYS. These non-19 factors result in a multiple 19. Then you introduce the indifferent element. The indifferent element includes 4 initials. It has the HM, ASQ, QX, and the QPR. So these have the indifferent element. We're ignoring all the other initials that have the active element. Once again, the non-19 factors are multiple 19. Now we introduce the active factor, and once again, you'll see the non-19 factors are the multiple 19. Do you see that? So the first, this module here has purely passive. This one has passive and indifferent, and this one has all 3.
Yeah, I see it. That's really cool.
Yeah, now if you go and do the same thing with the modern script, the PPP doesn't exist for modern script for obvious reasons because it's active and the P here will have to be an A.
Mm-hmm.
But it's technically 19 times 0, even though that's redundant. This would also be redundant because this is just a repetition of the previous one of the Spanish script. We had the same 4 initials, so it was impressive the first time, but this time it's just redundant because it's just repetition. But what's not redundant is when we introduce the active element here, we get a 19 multiple. If you add, I don't know what's happening. Okay, if you add these guys and this guy too, you get 19 times this big number. So the P by itself, then introduce the indifferent element, then introduce the active element, you get 19 for all of them. Now let's look at the 0 multiples, look at the non-zero multiples, I'm at C. So a CNM means close 19 multiple. So every number in existence, right, has a CNM, has a close 19 multiple. So the close 19 multiple of 45 would be 38, of 100 would be 95, which is 90 times 5. So CNM isn't really impressive, but what is impressive is when the CNM results in a double 19 factor, because this isn't guaranteed. This actually has the same chance of anything being multiple 19, which is 1 over 19. which is 5%. So the CNM of 365 would be 361, 19 times 19. The CNM of 1080 would be 1083, which is 19 times 19. So on and so forth. Did you get that? Did you get that principle?
Yeah, I understand it.
All right, perfect. So now let's add the zero multiple. Well, these are all non-19 multiples. So we can't take their non-19 factors because it's not 19 multiple. But if we take the CNM of these three initials that result in a 919 multiple, right? You'll see that the result, the CNM, is 19 times 19 times some other number.
Wow.
And these are for the initials that resulted in something that wasn't a 19 multiple. Their CNM, their collective CNM is 19 times 19. They're close to 19 multiple. So once again, CNMs aren't anything impressive, but they are impressive when the result is a double 19. And one more thing about these initials that resulted in a non-19 multiple is that their orientation in the Quran or their configuration in the Quran is impressive, because from ALM, it makes it to even chapter 2. From ALM to TH, there's 19 chapters. And these are the two initials that result in non-19 multiple. And from TH to Sod, again, another 19 chapters. And then from the entire range consists of 19 times 2015 verses. So their configuration, these three initials that resulted in non-19, these guys are also impressive in their own regard. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. What do you think?
Wow, I'm fairly impressed, man. That's so good. Nice job.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It took me like, I think, a month and a half to construct the whole thing.
Yeah,
I came in late. Man, that was good. I wish I could have saw the whole thing. Thanks, brother.
No, don't worry. I
No problem.
recorded the
Allah
whole
bless
thing,
you.
so I can share it with you, God willing.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm still starstruck about the confirmation of the modern script. That was so cool.
the long script, exactly. The fact that his letters, the letters of Rashad Khalifa's name occurred 19 times 19 times 11 in chapter 11, and then his initials are both 19 multiples as well, RK, in that same chapter. And then the four changes he made to the Quran up to 11.1 are all 19 multiples, and their non-19 factors was 19 multiple.
Dude, it's just mind blowing. I'm gonna end the recording now.
Yeah, go ahead, man.